We're going to read in chunks so we don't stop, so we keep an eye on the time. And we're wearing poppies because today is November 11th. How many people know that? Hands up. Anyone not know it's November 11th? Okay. So we're going to read in honor of the day, In the Shadow of War. And it begins with a quote. There are prose quotes throughout this poem, but we're not going to stop and identify them. We'll just name the people who we're quoting from. The whole poem begins with a quote from Shauna Singh Baldwin. She's a Canadian novelist. Hope and optimism are essential if we are to overcome the worldwide return to fascism and hate-based politics. The first poem is being published separately, but it was actually written as the beginning of this poem. It's called Name Change, and it begins with a quote from Osama bin Laden from 1996. Quote, "These youth love death as you love life." At the beginning, it was a sense of awe at the individual's action. A hero, perhaps, to give up their own life. For what? Political gain, religious devotion, duty, history, the glory of an afterlife. Certainly the emphasis was on suicide, a voluntary giving up of body and soul to a cause supposedly beyond the single life, the unique fingerprint of someone's existence here on planet Earth.
Now, as the deaths grow in number, innocent persons blown to pieces, injured, people suffering, sirens and rubble in country after country, victims carried away on stretchers, blood on city streets, in places of worship or shopping or transport, hotels or nightclubs, airplanes. As time goes on, the emphasis shifts to bomber. An operative meant solely to blow up, blast apart, detonate, and destroy. Finally, there has come to be a change of name. Homicide bomber. The hero become a murderer. The physical body no longer flesh, bone, spirit, but now a form of arms, an object designed to inflict bodily harm. The beauty of weapons, quote unquote, no longer a metaphor, but a deadly reality. The radiance of a unique soul, no longer human, but weaponry, to murder, maim, and kill.
2. In the name. In the name of what God do we kill random victims? Is any war holy? Holy and war juxtaposed become an oxymoron, an irreconcilable opposition, where one cannot contain the other. In 1895, dissident peasants burned their rifles, refused to take up the cause of killing, became pacifists. 7,000 Doukhobours of Czarist Russia burned their firearms, a collective proclamation to the world, wars and militarism must end. Kuzma J. Tarasov, writer. What God demands children be blown to pieces with bombs? What heaven can provide refuge for terrorists who murder? Russian pacifists called Doukhobours, wrestling with spirit was the name given in derision. They took this as their path to struggle with God's spirit within themselves. In their actions as spirit wrestlers, they say, toil and peaceful life. Thus, holy war can be a quest for inner growth, a call to live a better life, to grow in spirit, not a justification to kill a child in their time of innocence, to murder someone who happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, or eliminate persons who do not believe in the same religion or who practice different rituals of observance.
The third part. 1984, Truth and Beauty. George Orwell wrote of a world where we would no longer think or speak without confusion. The weapons made it seem as if I were promoting radicalism, but that wasn't my intention. I wanted to show how it is possible to be equally devout and loving while you are also being completely violent and destructive. This is a quote from Shirin Neshat, artist, photographer. In the context, what context? How is it possible to be violent and loving, devout and destructive? Doublespeak, oxymoron, confusion used as a weapon. Tell the murdered victim you killed them with love and devotion. Explain at the same time that your love and devotion did not include your fellow humans only selectively. Doukhobours say, where there is love, there is God. Sam Hamill, poet. I go in fear of those for whom belief is fervent, for whom belief is absolute. I have lived through generations of war, through the misery and slaughter of countless millions of innocent people. Almost invariably, this flood tide of bloodshed has been authored in the name of God and justice. God, we are told again and again, is on our side. If we murder every murderer, there will be no one left. If we murder every murderer, we will kill one another wholesale. Jew and Muslim, Christian and Hindu, non-believer and capitalist, communist, Democrat. Always saying, God with us, God is on our side. In the name of what God do we slaughter, torture, kill, wage holy war, or unholy terror? Just being righteous or pious does not mean acting according to God's will in the name of human lust for greed, power, malice, revenge, superiority. We are more than capable of killing one another. There is no excuse for terrorism. I see on television every night more violence than at the real beheading I saw. Al Jazeera television viewer. Fictional violence versus actual violence. Another confusion. Another doublespeak.
4. The mask of tragedy. Masked men, masked bandits, masked militants. The same swagger and dagger, faces hidden, holding machine guns, staring into the camera, with slits of eyes showing, slitting Nicholas Berg's young throat in front of a camera to display around the world in the name of political gain, spiritual profit, a reward in what kind of afterlife? God is always with us in the moment of compassion. As Doukhobours say, where there is good counsel, there is enlightenment. This is the spirit wrestler way of life: love, good counsel, toil, peaceful living, through actions creating heaven on earth. Quote, the many faces and voices of poetry in the world connect us to all one great family. Poetry is one of the 1,000 paths to a more enlightened life. What poetry is in the life of a man who slits the throat of another to make a political advertisement? Sam Hamill, poet.
5. There are no excuses. There are no excuses for terrorism. Jewish cemetery defiled, Jewish school burned, library books blackened and scorched by fire. Hatred multiplies, breeds more hatred. The sins of the fathers visited upon their sons. It takes 2 positives to undo a negative. 1 to erase the hate, 1 to move the heart toward love. Imagine the goal being to rid the world of religious and political pluralism. Call it Ku Klux Klan, call it Nazism, call it Islamist militants, call it hatred in any language, in any culture, any race, any religious practice. Protestant versus Catholic. Imagine killing your next door neighbor who is part of the same faith. Oh, holy, holy, holy. God willing, an empty phrase, without love for your fellow human, your daughter, neighbor, the child 1,000 miles away. Doukhobours remind us, the welfare of the world is not worth the life of one child. In 1895, Doukhobours burned their firearms, refusing to fight and kill a fellow human. In 2004, Islamist militants beheaded civilian Nicholas Berg, the execution filmed and viewed on television. Anger, slaughter, violence treated as spectacle. War and bombs shown on television, live coverage of all acts of destruction. Impossible to turn the clock back, time relentlessly moving forward. But where we start does not mean we will end where we expect to. Enlightenment needs to occur every minute in each person's consciousness. Love, not hatred. Tolerance, not intolerance. Peace, not war. Freedom, not oppression. Equality, not power. Compassion, not greed. 6. This is the last section. 1895, burning of the guns in Russia. When the Doukhobours burned their firearms and took a stand against killing, it was a revolutionary moment in history, created not by taking up arms, but by laying them aside. The Doukhobours accepted suffering, persecution, and exile. Instead of war, Doukhobours began to live as an example, declaring every individual as equal, regardless of gender, wealth, or status. Iskra, that spark of the divine, made manifest in the here and now. No religious text to be taken literally. Heaven, the place created by one another, for each other, all working for the common good. This by a collective of uneducated peasants, moved by spirit toward the global village. Quote, it was as though a group of hillbillies came up with the theory of relativity and the physics for space travel. Andrei Bondra, writer. If a group of farmers could defy Russia's laws, take a stand against war and killing at the end of the 19th century, we at the beginning of the 21st can learn to live without our terrible love of war and find a facet of God within every religion in the straightforward terms the Doukhobours describe. Toil and peaceful life. Where there is love, there is God. Where there is good counsel, there is enlightenment. The welfare of the world is not worth the life of one child. Thank you. What a great audience, and the students here, you're great, you're wonderful.